Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now, a couple of weeks back I did a video on the grading system and whether it was a scam. I'd sent in a couple of figures that had already been graded to be regraded to see if the grades had changed over time or if the grading companies themselves had a sort of vagaries to their grading process. And it was a very interesting video and it got some very interesting discussions going. But the main discussion that I got from that video, which is what I wanted to cover today, is all about this Skeletor. Now, this is a hard head Skeletor. So the idea with a hard head Skeletor is that the head is not a soft rubber, it's made out of a hard rubber, and the armour that he comes with is from the sort of Hong Kong factory, so it's made out of a darker material, and it has a slightly different sword. And that was the sort of main issue that came up, because a lot of collectors said that this isn't actually a hard head Skeletor and it should never have been graded. So I want to go over the sort of the reasons that they've given in this video and show you some of the sort of the finer details of it, and basically send out a question to the larger collecting community whether they agree that this is a hard head Skeletor or not, because as far as I'm aware at the moment there is no sort of real consensus on it. So let's take a closer look at the figure and I'll show you the reasons why it's sort of been discussed as it could or could not be a hard head Skeletor, and we'll see what the wider community has to think about it. So as I say, this is what is commonly known as a hard head Skeletor, and if we look at the grading on the figure you can see here that this is Masters of the Universe Skeletor hard head 1984 Mattel with a 1981 stamp with no COO marking on it, and it's got an overall 80% score. And as I say, this was the second time this has been graded, so if we look at the original grading sticker here, you can see it got pretty much the same scores. The actual paint score was slightly different, but all of the information about the figure is exactly the same. So obviously the UK graders think that this is a hard head Skeletor, and the main reason for thinking that is all about the armour, because the hard head Skeletors come with the Hong Kong version of the armour, which is a slightly darker colour. It's not going to be particularly easy for me to show you that. I do have one other hard head Skeletor here, and you can see if I compare the upper armours, you can see that the Hong Kong Skeletor armour is slightly darker than a standard Skeletor. You can see it's just a little bit darker. So that's the first difference. The second difference is the sword. If we have a look at the sword here, I'll turn it over, you can see on the back of the sword that this is actually a male sword. So you can see that there is a little ridge there. And if we look at He-Man's sword, this is also a male sword. It's got a little ridge there, but most Skeletor swords are actually the female version. So I'm going to just grab my other Skeletor here. We'll take off his sword. So this is a normal Skeletor sword, and you can see this is a female sword because there is a groove in there. And what's supposed to happen is you can actually clip these two swords together because one is male, one is female. But on the hard head Skeletor, it is actually He-Man's sword but recast in Skeletor's material. So it has the little ridge here. Just about see that there, and that is the main sort of telltale difference, that this is a hard head He-Man's set of armour. But then we need to move on to the figure, which is where there's all sort of the main issues seem to lie. So the hard head figure is actually made out of a slightly different plastic, and it's a slightly different shade of blue. Again, not easy to see the difference, but you can see it's a slightly darker shade of blue. And the reason for this is produced at the same time that they were producing the Dragon Blaster Skeletor, and that is made of that same bluer plastic. But the first issue why people are pointing out this is not a sort of real hard headed figure, we need to take a look at his face. If you look at Skeletor's face here, you can see he's made up of green and yellow paint schemes, and just between his eyes there are no lines. If we look at another hard head Skeletor I have here, you can see that there are two lines between his face. So that is one telltale sign that a lot of collectors are saying proves that this is not a real hard head Skeletor. You can see he has no lines between his eyes. And the other reason is his feet, because when they made Dragon Blaster Skeletor, because Dragon Blaster Skeletor has such a large piece of armour on him, they changed Skeletor's feet, and you can see there's an extra prong on the back of it. If I bring in an original Skeletor and we have a look at them side by side, I'll just get the 2 feet lined up here. You can see the feet are shorter and they don't have that prong on it. And a proper hard head Skeletor should not have this extra prong and such large wide feet. It should have these original Skeletor feet. So people are saying that this Skeletor that is in this case now is just a Dragon Blaster Skeletor with some dark Hong Kong armour over the top of it, and this is not a correct combination of figure. So as soon as I had this information, I started asking around some of the really sort of in-depth collectors that I know, and I've sent images of this version of Skeletor to them, and some have come back saying that yeah, this is not a real figure, it should never have been graded because this combination of figure and armour doesn't exist. And then other collectors have said no, it's fine, it's just a sort of rarity and a very nice item, and that it is fine and it should have been graded because it is the correct figure and the correct armour. And I've yet to find a sort of definite answer as to whether this is true, because the only way to sort of prove that this is a real figure is actually to find a version of this Skeletor on card with this sort of combination of armour, and as yet I've been unable to find an image that sort of matches exactly what I've got. There are a few websites out there that have images of sort of all the versions of Skeletor on cards, but more and more seem to be appearing, and more variants seem to be appearing with different sort of combinations. So until I found an exact copy of this figure still on its card with all the sort of bits exactly as I have here, there's really very little proof that this is the correct combination, which is why I sort of think it's strange that it was graded and given this sort of good grade. I have emailed UK graders and asked them these questions, but as of yet I've had no response from them, and I have to say that seems to be a little bit how they work. They grade figures and then they just sort of leave them to the world, and it's very hard to get them to sort of justify what they've done. It would be much nicer if they sort of actually included some information when you get your figures graded to give you a reasoning of why they have graded this as it is, and maybe even some proof, because the fact that I've now got this figure and no one seems to have a sort of consensus on what it is makes it sort of a very odd item. If I was to try and sell this, people would be asking me questions, and to be honest, there is absolutely no answer that I can give them as to sort of where it is or where it's come from, because when I got it originally it was already graded. I picked this up off eBay years ago. I think I paid about £15 for it as a graded figure, and I just assumed that because it had been graded it was correct. But now I've had it regraded, I'm at a loss because so many people have said it's not a real figure. So what I'd like to ask of the sort of general community and the people who watch my channel is, can you prove that this is a real figure? You know, I'd like some sort of photographic evidence of this version of Skeletor mounted sort of on its original card, so that we can sort of prove that this is a real figure and it's not just a mishmash of Skeletor armour put on a Dragon Blaster body. You know, if you've got some evidence or if you've got some information, then please do drop me a line, because I'd really like to find out and get a definitive answer. Because as I say, the grading, it's got a reasonable grade, but is it a proper figure, or is this a mistake by the grading company's part? And if they made a mistake twice, I would really like to find out the answer. So please do get in touch. So I hope you found this video interesting. If you've enjoyed it, then please click the subscribe button and make sure to tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.